Thank you. I don't have anything for you to vote on. There will be no math. Darryl was not supposed to do that. That's okay. No stats in mine either. And first, a couple of quick thank yous to Darryl for being an incredible partner and filling this room with everyone that really matters for this relationship. And BMO, to Enbridge and MDA, really appreciated that. And also to my co-conspirator and partner in crime, Jerry Butts. And I don't mean that in a former U.S. presidential sense. You got there, yeah, absolutely. But more in the sense that, you know, all things U.S. and Canada, we've known each other for some 15 years. We've really been connected and wanting to do more, in a truly nonpartisan way. And this has been the culmination of both that friendship and that very intense work together. So I really want to thank Jerry for that. As you see, I'm just walking around. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to say, but I have a few general themes that I want to get to. First of all, you may, just getting up this morning, so you probably know that NATO has added 800 miles to the Russian border in furthering escalation between NATO and Russia that's gone kind of both ways, pretty much straight up over the course of the last 13 plus months since the Russians illegally invaded Ukraine. Former President Trump today will actually be fingerprinted. I guess around 2 p.m. we'll all take a little break to watch some of that. That's a lot of news. We just call that Tuesday right now. Almost any day you pick, there are big pieces of our global order that are moving, both in ways that are unprecedented in our lifetimes and also in ways that I suspect most of you join me in finding mildly discomforting. And I wanted to start by saying that there are really three reasons for that. And they're not about individual leaders, frankly. Reason number one, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the West failed to integrate Russia into Western institutions. Now, I'm not suggesting who's to blame for that. I'm simply saying it's a reality. And the Russians, once a great power, now in serious decline, are really angry about that. And we are where we are. That's reason number one. Reason number two, the West did see fit to integrate China into Western institutions on the largely unspoken American presumption that as the Chinese became wealthier and more powerful, that they would become Americans. It turns out they're still Chinese. And the United States is not enormously comfortable with that. And as a consequence, we have an increasingly tense, hostile, even confrontational U.S.-China relationship. And my thanks to the Canadians for helping us defend against the balloons. So, they did that. You did that. You did that. We did that. We did that. That's number two. Number three, look inward. In the United States, in Canada, in most of the developed world, tens of millions of citizens, yes, even voting citizens, increasingly feel like they are not well or even legitimately represented by their leaders, by their governments. They're angry about it. They feel left behind by processes of globalization. The grievances are many, but having largely ignored those problems for decades, there are significant internal challenges with the idea of being global policemen, with the idea of being the architects of global trade, with the idea of even promoting or agreeing on what global values should be. And I would say that if you took those three things and put them together, that explains 90+% of all of the major geopolitical challenges and conflicts that are driving headlines right now. You want to know why Xi Jinping has gone back to Moscow and has a relationship with Russia and Putin specifically that is every bit as solid as it was a year ago, February 4th, before the invasion, that global friendship without leaders, without limits? That's why. You want to know why the Saudis and the Iranians are traveling to Beijing and forming a new relationship that the US and allies had no part of. That's why. You want to know why Assad is going to be invited to the Arab League, despite being considered a rogue leader and war criminal by the developed countries in the world? That's why. You also want to know why the EU is stronger today than it was 5, 10 years ago. That's why. Why do they have stronger defense policy and fiscal policy and health policy than they did? You want to know why NATO is expanding and stronger. You want to know why the G7 is expanding, and not expanding, is stronger, is more aligned. You want to understand why even Republicans and Democrats in the United States, my God, agree that they dislike Xi Jinping and Putin more than each other. I mean, I actually saw both McConnell and McCarthy in the United States over the past month both say they are on Team Biden when it comes to Russia-Ukraine. I don't think you can hear them say that on very much. But on fundamental national security and geopolitics, as we go around the world, there's more alignment than not. So this is not all bad news. But the question is whether it is sustainable. The trajectory we are now on globally does not feel sustainable. The US-Canada relationship is great. Right? We saw that 2 weeks ago when Biden came north of the border. The meeting with Trudeau displayed an enormous amount of alignment and empathy. And we saw that in some of the announcements that were made on migration and the border. We see it on increasing alignment on industrial policy and critical minerals and automotive. We see it in the increased lack of trust, dislike for what China's doing. We see it, frankly, in the recognition, the mutual recognition that neither of us really want to do very much about Haiti. Okay, that's not a positive thing, but it's an aligned thing. No, the fact is that both in the things that we're doing relatively well and in the things we're failing at, we are actually talking to each other. We're understanding each other. We understand even with the announcement of this incredible new trip planned to the moon, which is great. But the one thing that Darryl didn't tell you is that if something goes wrong on that mission, the Canadian astronaut is there for food, right? Like that, we are going to eat him, right? I mean, that is, I don't know, I think the Prime Minister was supposed to make that announcement. I hope I didn't. You notice we asked for a strapping Canadian astronaut. We didn't want a little one, just in case. That's important. But what I wanted to get at here is that all of the alignment we see between the United States and Canada, and it does feel good right now, but it is not acceptable for this to be the high water mark. And I want to make clear that it could be the high water mark, right? I mean, we all know not just the external challenges that are helping bring us together because of the urgency, because of the danger, and because of the recognition that we've ignored them for a while, but also the challenges internally that are making it harder for us to get our own houses in order, harder to align. The electoral cycle in the US will make that abundantly clear, the division, the dysfunction. Something needs to be done about that. And the timing for us on this US-Canada summit is to build some architecture, some focus, some momentum, as much as we can do with the platforms that we have to help ensure that we will put the work in so that as the relationship has pressure to slip, to lose, to fragment, that won't happen. And I do agree with Darryl that in many ways the US-Canada relationship geopolitically is the most developed. This is not US-France, right? Where you go and do a multi-billion-dollar submarine deal around their back. You don't tell them. They hear about it on CNN, and then they pull their ambassador. We wouldn't do that, right? That's not US-Canada. It's not US-UK, which was a special relationship, and then the UK systematically worked at destroying themselves for the course of about a decade, right? It's not that either. The Canadians will not do that. I've been told by the Canadians, you will not do that. But it is a relationship where I think we need to truly be honest with each other, honest about the challenges, honest about what we can't get done, honest about how scared we are about the future of our system. The fact that the existential threats out there are not Russia and China, does our political model work? Is it fit for purpose? And that is where we have so much at stake together. I mean, if January 6th had become much bigger than that, the impact of that on the United States system and on democracy more broadly would have been deeply significant. This has not gone away. People might feel like they had a bit of a reprieve. All of that division, that dysfunction is still there. We need to align on technology, not just on semiconductors, not just on Huawei, but on how we're going to treat data, how we're going to treat algorithms, how we're going to treat generative AI, how we're going to relate to the fact that back in 1989, when the wall came down, the United States was the principal exporter of democracy worldwide, frequently unsuccessfully, frequently hypocritically, but nonetheless number one, working with our allies. And today, in 2023, you can make the argument that the United States is increasingly the leading exporter of tools that damage and even destroy democracy, including in the United States, including in Canada. Our two countries must be aligned on how we will respond to that reality, how different that reality is from when we were growing up. So I think these things are critically important. I ask you to be as honest, as open as you can possibly be, knowing that you're with trusted friends, knowing that the reason we can do that is because we're not here to take advantage of each other. We're here to try to save ourselves. And I will tell you, both for Eurasia Group and for BMO, we are completely committed to working as hard as we can on this relationship going forward. So I thank you for just all of you being here, for your enthusiasm and your support. And I'm really looking forward to the day, and I hope I have better socks than the Prime Minister. I'm working on that too. So thank you all very, very much. Talk to you soon.